Hi everyone, today I'm doing a voiceover because yeah, I forgot to switch on the mic again. So basically I decided to share with you the Pentel brush pens, and here I pulled out the basic water brush, which probably everyone knows at this point, but they were quite sort of much talked about in the urban sketching kind of world of things. And so yeah, so basically the only other Pentel thing that I ever knew is this Pentel Oil Pastels Set, which funny enough was my first ever oil pastels, which I bought back at college when I was doing art A levels here in UK. So this was a very long time ago, and yeah, so I didn't know Pentel as a brand back then, and I certainly didn't even realize that this set was by Pentel when I started getting into art supplies a few years back, and when I bought that water brush that I just showed you. So it was kind of really funny to me to by a sort of incident just to pull out these pastels one day and realize that they were by Pentel. So anyway, yes, back to this brush, and this brush comes in 3 different tip sizes: the small, medium and large, and the one that I have here, which I use most of the time, is the medium. In a minute you'll see the comparison of the brush sizes to the brush sizes of the ink brush pens, and they're fairly similar. So the good thing about obviously a water brush is that if you like to do art on the go, which presumably soon we can actually, in some countries we can already start going outside a little bit more easier than it was before, during the lockdown that is. And yeah, so they're great, but they're also great, to be honest, to use at home. Quite often, if I want to just swatch out something super quickly or do a very quick wash, or like a experimental sketch of some sort, I tend to just pull this brush and use it, rather than making sure there's clean water in my jar and picking a brush. Not that that takes any long time or is inconvenient, obviously, but sometimes if you forgot to clean the water in your jar, then that's quite easy. So these brush pens are they come in a variety of colors. Out of the top of my head, I think it was something around 20. So loads of colors, or 12, I think 20. Don't quote me on that. And yeah, so the first color that I ordered was Sepia, and I loved it so much that I decided to go ahead and order the light gray color as well. So you can see the packaging here. This is what it looks like when you first get it, and the pen itself has quite a good compartment there, which is filled with ink, so it's quite generous. The ink is said to be water-based, and it's as you will see later, it is water soluble, which is the fun bit. So when you first get this pen, you get this red ring around it, and what you need to do is unscrew it, but I found it's sort of the other way around than what you usually would expect it. So I was screwing it the logical way and it just wasn't going, so then I realized you had to go the other way. It's a bit funny, I don't know why, but yeah, so once you have taken the red ring off, you screw the top part to the bottom part back on, and then you just need to do a bit of squeezing, which you'll see in a minute. So here is the brush. So again, when it's brand new, it looks like that, just white acrylic bristles, and then once you start getting the ink down the barrel, it then obviously saturates the bristles, and that's what it looks like here. Comparing the tips, they're very comparable. It's maybe that there's slight, very slight difference in the sense that the medium seems to look a little bit thinner, just a little tiny bit, and I think that could be maybe because this brush has been used for quite a few years now. I'm talking about the Pentel water brush up against the ink brush pen. And so yeah, that's the only difference. And then obviously the compartments are different, so the bottom halves, but the top halves are actually identical, and even the cup is identical. It's just an a clear cup versus a colored cup to match the ink. So then you have to squeeze the barrel a little bit to get the ink going. This time I was trying to squeeze it ever so gently to make sure I don't oversaturate the bristles, because in the first pan, the sepia color, I was squeezing a little bit too strongly, I felt, because the ink just kind of came out and it was hard to control in the end. The brush was constantly saturated with a lot of ink and I couldn't get that fine line which I needed less ink, so I ended up kind of wiping away a lot of the ink to get to a thin line. So here this time, for that reason, I was kind of doing it gently, but then I just started pressing on it harder because it was just taking forever, and it seems that there is no other way of getting the ink out other than giving it a good squeeze a good few times. And I think, I don't remember now, but I think the same thing happened, in the sense that just, in the end, the ink just kind of gushes out a little bit. And yeah, so you can see it sort of started coming out a little bit there, but very slowly, and then you need to again squeeze it, and then there's what I'm trying to say, there's no way of getting it out slowly. It either doesn't come out or it just comes out, but like a lot of it. That's the only downside, if I could call it a downside, I guess, because the ink itself is super fun. Love it. I mean, the combination of these two inks is just something so good. You will see it in a bit when I'm going to swatch them out and do a bit of mixing in a way. So I think I am, there we go. Something is starting to happen. So this is a light gray color, and there is, I think, a darker gray as well, but this is such a gorgeous color. It's perfect for shading if you're doing illustrations and you just want to create a bit of a shade for like portraits, as well as, yeah, for portraits. Both of the colors are great, the sepia and the light gray. So here you can see you can go from a thin fine line to wider strokes, and then the less ink you have, the more lighter it will look, and then you can also kind of play around and end up sort of pressing on the bristles harder, and then you get more ink and that will look darker. So there's a lot of variety here with the brush marks that you can create, as well as the tone, so it can be darker to lighter and thin to thick. So with just one brush, it's a lot of fun. Also, the way the ink behaves is quite nice. It doesn't feel like a just a normal ink that you would put in a fountain pen, for instance. It kind of is sort of in between a watercolor and an ink, so it's an interesting compound of whatever ingredients they put in there. So there I'm trying to show you that it is water soluble, and there was a little bit of pink actually on the water brush, hence why I got a bit of a pinky color there. So there we go. I realized that just in time, and now I'm just clearing off the brush. And then what was quite interesting is the sepia. So these are the swatches from the day before, and I was curious whether they actually would be also water soluble. after quite a while of drying time. And yes, they're beautifully soluble, and they move nicely, and it doesn't matter whether you worked with it day before or on the same like day or a couple of seconds ago. They move beautifully. And in fact, you could just use one of those pans and use it in combination with the water brush. So here, look, I've taken that thin line and I completely dissolved it. It just came off completely. So you can, like I said, using a combination of those three, I felt was just such a gorgeous discovery for me. So the light grey, the sepia, and the water brush. And look at that, it just looks like a beautiful, almost Daniel Smith kind of, you know, granulating type of a watercolor swatch. Although I have to say, when it dries, it sort of kind of smooths out a little bit more. It doesn't look granulated, but when it's thin, it just has this gorgeous kind of watercolor effect, really. Here I'm trying to do wet in wet, so the watercolor was still a little bit wet, and just to see again how it would behave. Also doing some bit of glazing and textural effects. It really is a fun tool to work with, whether just on its own. I think it was early on I was trying to say that even if you just take one color, pick like your favorite color of these ink brush pens, and then use it with combination of some sort of water and a brush. I mean, I love using the Pentel one, obviously. Look how fine I could get that stalk there for the flower. If you wanted to do little doodles, you can still do that. So you can go from as fine as that to, you know, larger elements. Yes, so yeah, I think that was the thought that I was trying to conclude, is the fact that you just need a bit of water with them and it just looks gorgeous, even just with one color. But specifically these two colors together, oh my gosh, I just love them. They have a modern vibe about them, kind of, if you love that contemporary brush kind of mark making, or mixed media type of look, then these are great for that. And look how light I could get into that sepia. So if you are a pastel person, you could go as saturated or as pastel as you wanted, and you could make your painting or illustration look like you used, I don't know, maybe a few, maybe up to 5 or even more different tools just with one pen. I was quite really surprised of how well they did on such a wide range. Like I said, from lightest to darkest, from fine line to white mark, from mixing, different brush marks that you can do, which I will also demonstrate in a bit. It's just lovely. And then I'm taking that very light wash of that sepia, so you can see what I'm doing there. I'm going into the day old swatch and just adding those into the petals to create shadow effect, and it's so subtle and gorgeous. And the reason I am so impressed is that some inks or some art tools don't really work very well on such a wide range of light to dark. They just, sometimes they're at their best at the most saturated, and they might look a little bit off when they're quite watered down. I have experienced that with some other ink type of a marker, watercolor soluble type of a marker. So in this case, it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, so if you're into doodling, then again this pen is fantastic because not only can you do some lines and whatnot, but you can create circles and little patterns and all sorts of brush marks of any type, because it's just you know, like a normal brush that you can do it with as well. So the bristles allow you to have that variety of things and that you would enjoy doing. And yeah, the conclusion is I absolutely love these Pentel brushes, and they are linked down below if you're interested. Thanks for watching and see you soon.